Hey everybody, welcome to Swedenborg and Life. We got a good show today. We're going to be looking at the nature of heaven, and we have these topics to get through. Heaven is a place caused by a state of mind, what heaven is like, and the joy of use. And you'll learn all of that coming up. So what is heaven? Is it a place? Well then, how could people create heaven here on earth if heaven itself is in a different location? Or is it a state of mind? Well then, is there any better place that we go to when we die? Is it just perpetual ecstatic bliss, just complete joy in the presence of God, like an eternal positive sensory overload? Then why have this life first, so full of nuance and variety? Is heaven being able to have everything that you want? Then how is heaven different from being rich? And we can all find examples of people who are rich but not happy. Is entry all it takes to get into heaven? Is there a gate that you could step across? Like, oh, now I'm in, I'm happy. But then suddenly you could step back across the threshold and not be feeling it anymore. Is there ever work in heaven? Do you ever have bad days in heaven? Why is there a heaven? Why don't we just start in heaven? But beyond all that, why even talk about heaven? Aren't we here now? If you're going to retire in Florida, you don't need to spend all of your time thinking about Florida. It will degrade the quality of your life here. You can deal with Florida when you get there. Is it the same thing with heaven? Is it something that we're not really interacting with now, so we should just put it on the back burner? So that's a lot of questions, but stay tuned. We're going to find out if Swedenborg has any answers for us. All right, welcome back. I had wanted to ask more questions, but I found out there was a limit to the number of questions you can have in an opening monologue, and I hit it. Right, they actually went 2 over. So we have, first of all, my name is Curtis. I'm with the Swedenborg Foundation, a nonprofit group that's just trying to start discussion around the ideas that Swedenborg wrote about and similar ones. And I have as guests with me today, Chara Daum and Dr. Soni Werner. Dr. Werner is Associate Professor of Psychology at Bernathen College, former head of the department there, and Chara Daum is a Latin consultant for the New Century Edition translation of Swedenborg's works. Thank you both for being back on this show. It's great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me back.
I think you guys are the most veteran crew. I think if I add up the number of appearances you both had, you're probably numbers 1 and 2 there on the show. So thank you very much.
Fun to be a freaking flyer.
Yes, exactly. Well, we wouldn't keep bringing you back if we weren't satisfied. So, okay, so we're going to talk. We got a big subject today. What is heaven? Because there's this. Everybody knows if you say heaven, everybody knows about that concept. There's a huge range of opinions from this is a complete fable to this is the only thing that matters. So we're going to take a look, hopefully, and try to get at some of these million questions that I started with. So let's look at our first topic. Heaven is a place caused by a state of mind, and this is pulled out of what Swedenborg, wrote extensively on heaven. In his spiritual experiences, he all the time was getting to visit this place that he was labeling heaven. So I want to see a little more about the nature of it. Is it a place called heaven? Is it a state called heaven? So let's take a look what he said. Here we have from Heaven and Hell. It can never be said that heaven is outside anyone. It is within. Because every angel accepts the heaven that is outside in keeping with the heaven that is within. And quickly, when he says any angel, he's in his experience, angels, that's just a term you name people who have gone to the next life and are real nice. People would call them evolved, enlightened, that kind of thing. But so Soni, what is he talking about when he's saying that heaven is within?
Well, I think based on what we know from people who have had near-death experiences, for instance, especially since the medical community has made it possible for us to, almost die and then come back. And then some people have those experiences and they tell us about them. One of the things that really strikes me is that people feel completely loved. They feel like, wow, just like when you're a 2-year-old and you sit on somebody's lap and they're completely enveloping you with love. And to be able, I think all of us grown-ups long for that. And so I've talked to adults who have had that experience and wow, that's pretty nice. And so to try to recreate that in our everyday life, how do I feel totally accepted and appreciated for what I'm trying to do? I think that's sort of a state of mind that we can relate to.
Yeah, I feel like that right now. So I'm already there.
We completely love you.
Yes, thank you. I know. So we kind of you're talking about people are having these near-death experiences made possible more frequently because of modern medicine, and what they get there, they're in this place that they would call heaven, but they're talking first about the emotions that I'm feeling completely loved, and it seems that Swedenborg is also corroborating that it has to do with what's going on in the mind and the heart, right? And so, Chara, I'm wondering about, so Swedenborg would go to heaven, but then there's also this, heaven is within. So how do you reconcile those two? What is the relationship between this location in the afterlife and this state of mind? If I can just throw that at you.
Yeah. That's a minor question. What comes to mind is when I think of a state of mind, I think of an everyday, just every day I feel like I go in and out of heaven, in and out of hell. It's like it's something very present with me. And it depends on a lot of factors, but everyone can imagine, just like there's something to look forward to, like you just learned something new, like wow, something suddenly makes sense, or the outlook looks bright, or there's all kinds of ways that when we're just feeling connected and we're feeling like we understand what things are about, and we feel like we love people and we know how to help them. So that kind of thing that just comes and goes every day, and then that as I understand it, this is the way Swedenborg describes it, that we come into a whole world that's like that after death. After our body dies, our mind and all that it's been doing to be in a state like that just gets to take over, and that's what heaven is. It's the place you go after you've been being there all your life. Or
being there for a percentage.
Well,
and then he calls that world the spiritual world, and he also says that our thoughts and feelings are spiritual, and that the organizing principles of that world are the same ones that are organizing our thoughts and feelings right now, so that you have sort of that their state of mind creates place, that what's going on inside has this effect on the outside, and that it's everybody in those states of mind, the love of learning, love of helping, everyone's together, that creates this space, and then people, if you can vibe with that, then you're in heaven. We have one more quote about that in this segment. Everyone living in the body associates with some community of spirits and angels, despite being totally unaware of the fact. And that, Chara, you were describing that in that, okay, I've got this little bit of heaven, and the flip side, what people call ego or hell. Okay, I got mad, I snapped at this person, lost my temper, I'm impatient. And that Swedenborg is saying that we have those two extremes in the mind because we actually are connecting with these larger realities that he calls heaven and hell. And we're focusing on heaven today. And let's get to our second topic, which this is a good segue in, what heaven is like. So if heaven is a mindset that creates a place, what is that mindset? Let's look at it a little more deeply, because it's something that we can be pursuing now, if it's just a state of mind. So we'll take a look at this, and then I promise I'll let you guys get a word in edgewise. We may gather how great angels' wisdom is from the fact that in heaven there is a communication that involves everyone. The intelligence and wisdom of one individual is shared with another. Heaven is where everyone shares everything of value. This is because the very nature of heavenly love is to want what is one's own to belong to another. So no one in heaven regards his or her good as authentically good unless it is someone else's as well. This is also the basis of heaven's happiness. So you'd probably want to know what's the basis of heaven's happiness. And Soni, it seems like he's saying that part of that is a sort of a selflessness and a non-possessiveness, right?
I like to think about contrasting various views of what the afterlife is like. For instance, I was thinking the other day about some famous people who recently died. And there was a lot of comments on tweets and things about rest in peace or going to the great reward. And Swedenborg has a different view. It's not just resting in this gray blahness, and it's not just getting a big party when you get there. It's really much more about you being with like-minded people, and you get to be useful together. It's kind of like a great team, like Habitat for Humanity, going out and fixing something and feeling great at the end of the day. But you get to use your particular talents, and you kind of hang out with this special group of people that are kind of like you, and you love to do the same kind of thing. And you feel wonderful when you get to use your skills with others for the sake of others. And you actually like to make those other people happy. That gives you, the Lord fills you in with happiness when you're actually doing that useful thing. You're not just sitting there playing with a harp.
Right. That,
Sorry, that's not it.
Which is,
Stop the harp lessons. It won't get you to heaven.
Shoot, that means I wasted a lot of money.
You wasted a lot of money. Even if you rented the harp, it's just not worth it.
So, and there we have again, where the mindset is creating heaven. You know, you're talking about what Swedenborg describes as heaven, and you're not mentioning like, oh, there's these giant cities, or these giant gates, and once you go through, there's this. You know, we're talking about how are people acting and thinking and feeling there, and that there are these things. You know, there are structures and the cities and everything as Swedenborg is describing in that world. But what is really making it heaven is how people are thinking and feeling there. So let's take a look at the next quote that we have. This is from Secrets of Heaven. I spoke with some spirits who thought heaven and heavenly joy consisted in being greatest. But I told them that the greatest in heaven is the one who is least. Whoever wants to be least has the greatest happiness. Heaven is wishing butter. Heaven is wishing butter.
I like butter.
And if you've ever had butter, you know what I'm talking about. For others than for ourselves with all our heart, and serving others for the sake of their own happiness. Not for any selfish goal, but for love. So again, Chara, he's talking about heaven and talking about the psychology of heaven, really. So it seems like sort of a desire to see other people happy is kind of a foundation of the heaven experience. Does that seem legit?
Absolutely. I would say it's about sharing your blessings, not hogging blessings, and just wanting the good stuff for yourself and
Hoarding
not caring
it,
about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
But sharing blessings of all kinds, emotional blessings, intellectual blessings.
Yeah.
And that brings me to this is a good little nuance that you kind of think of. Oh yeah, if I was rich, I would need to donate money or something. But there's a lot of ways that you're rich, and one of those is if you have particular skills in a certain area, or even if you're just cool, like everybody thinks you're great. That in heaven, if I was let's just alternate universe where I'm cool, and what
it could happen.
What thank you. That in the heavenly mindset, as he's describing there, I'm not satisfied with being cool unless I can somehow be giving it to someone else as well. Oh well, I'm the homecoming queen, but I'm going to invite this kid who has no friends to the table, and then I'm going to use my coolness to help them feel good. Like that. That's the heaven sort of mindset, as I see. So I appreciate that.
Can I say one more thing about that real quick?
Certainly
okay,
can.
I just in my translation work, I came across a number recently that was talking about that the only thing. It was talking about possessions and property, and it was saying in heaven the only things that people lend or borrow are things that have to do with love and wisdom. They're not borrowing like
sugar,
the car or a cup
tools.
of sugar. Things that have to do with love and wisdom, things we care about, things we've learned. That's what we want to share.
Yeah.
I like to think of the best of YouTube. I know this shows up on YouTube, but the best of YouTube is when all you have to do is put in a little search and say, how do you put brakes in your car?
Yes.
Or how do you lead a good life? Or how do you, drive across the George Washington Bridge and not have an accident? It's amazing. Everybody's got a YouTube that shares what they know how to do. And they're sharing their factual wisdom, but they're also showing, I really love to make these things, and I want you to see it on my YouTube.
Yeah.
I think it's a great facsimile of what heaven might be like.
How do you fall asleep? Swedenborg and life. Okay, we have one more quote in this one before we move on. But so heaven is union with the Lord, and this is a whole other branch of his description of it. Since union with the Lord varies, though, and heaven is therefore not the same in one angel as it is in another, it also follows that the nature of heaven depends on the nature of the union with the Lord.
Yeah.
So nobody can tell you this is what heaven's like, because heaven is different for everyone. So we'll leave it at that because we got to get rolling. Next topic is the joy of use. Now, Soni, I think you've both touched on this idea that heaven, a huge component of it is what Swedenborg calls usefulness, or helping out, something like that. Let's take a look at what he says about it. Secrets of Heaven. Angelic life consists in usefulness and acts of neighborly kindness. Nothing makes angels happier than giving information to spirits newly arrived from the world and teaching them, serving people on earth, making sure evil spirits present with them do not go too far, and inspiring them with good, and reviving the dead as they enter eternal life, eventually taking them to heaven, if the condition of their souls allow it. So it's sort of angelic jobs. Yeah. Angels find more happiness in these activities than could ever be described. In performing them, they become images of the Lord. In performing them, they love their neighbor more than themselves. This makes heaven. So, Chara, it seems like, we can get little glimpses of it here, but he's seeming to say that particularly, in the heavenly mindset, which is something we can get some of here, but also, it expands, as you said, in the next life. It seems that, one seed that really grows is this joy of helping out. Does that pop up fairly often?
Absolutely, it's there all the time. That's what it is. It's being useful to other people, serving other people. Not in a servile and demeaning way,
right?
But in a
because nobody wants to be the greatest there, as we saw.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Right.
It's humbling, but not humiliating. I think there's a difference there. Sometimes people have jobs that they feel humiliated by because they're a servant or a customer service kind of a person, and they just always feel like they're second class. Well, it's not like that. It's really, you get to use your talents, and there's some joy in you made somebody else's life better today. And so I often like to think, I'm a career counselor too, and people often say, well, what's going to be my job after I'm dead? And I'm going, well, let's think about that. So I've often thought myself, what job do I want in the next world? And we were just talking a minute ago about, I think I would love to be a therapist. When people go through kind of a life review, they die, they're in the world of spirits, and they're getting kind of a flashback of their life. And they're going to be a little traumatized by looking over the movie of their life. And I would love to be there and say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That's the job I want.
That's the coolest thing to me about near-death experiences, was this psychological side of them. And then people get these huge answers to these, because life doesn't make sense. I mean, and all the nuances of it, just why are these things happening? Why is it like this? But there they get kind of this, it all makes sense, and that seems like, that's a fun thing. And I think, and touching on what you said about service, somebody who's in a position of authority can still be serving. That if I'm the mayor of something, if I wake up and I'm excited about how much good I can do in the lives of other people, that's being of service. So it's not just like, okay, here's your coffee or your tea.
Sort of like Jean Valjean. I'm not sure if I'm saying is that the right name?
Is that
in Les Miserables?
Yes.
He really exemplified somebody who had some difficulties in life, and then later on he was the mayor of his town, and he just really seemed to be a good portrayal of somebody who really cared about all the people in his small town, trying to serve them, even going to the nth degree in some cases.
Awesome.
So.
All right. Any further thoughts before we close?
No. Go ahead. Let's bring on the questions.
I just want to say I very nearly sneezed, but I stopped it. Okay. We're going to take a quick video break. Okay, welcome back. I think something that I could have said earlier, but that I'm saying now is we would love to hear your questions and your comments. And so if you want to submit those, just if you're watching this on YouTube, which I think you are, write in a comment just on the comment section or a question there, and we'll grab it and we'll try to answer it now. Or if you found this via Facebook and you don't have a YouTube account, just go back to Facebook, leave your question there, and we'll grab it and try to answer it here. Or we'll just at least talk about it. I don't always find I have answers.
We don't always answer.
I can say I have answers, but I'd love to see someone who really knew the answers look at my answers. Okay, but that said, if that hasn't deterred you all, let's take a look at our first one for today. Did Swedenborg ever see the Blessed Virgin Mary? That's from Evelyn. Yes. The answer is yes. I would say, and you guys can correct me where I'm wrong, but first of all, he would say that like sort of figures that are often considered single people, he would sort of find were actually uses, as we've been talking about. So like Archangel Michael is actually all the angels who are in the mode of protecting or something like that, they're performing that use. So he would call them all that, like it's a title rather than a specific person that's way more important than all the other angels. I think probably with Mary it would be a similar thing. Also, he does say that he came across the actual Mary person, right, who was Mary in the world, and she was just like a person, like, hey, that's great, Jesus. I consider Jesus God, and I just want to be a regular person. So that's do you guys have any other?
Yeah, and I think that can be a startling idea because some faith traditions really put her as like a queen and really very, very important. And Swedenborg really says one of her best qualities is her humility. And she accepted her role with graciousness and did not elevate herself or think of herself as very important. And I think she acted that way when Swedenborg met her. She was not acting very queen-like. Do you have the same recollection? Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to mention the functions because I think a lot of people have experience with, like I saw the Virgin Mary or something, and so it makes me think there is something out there that people are interacting with. Swedenborg wouldn't say that there is this historical figure of Mary who is somehow in a special spiritual position, but there may be something answering to this. So, So anyway.
Some quality.
Yeah, some kind of quality. Yeah. So as we said, we don't know. Yeah. Please ask your question. We won't know the answer. Okay, next one is from M. Christina. Did Swedenborg believe that passing over was like graduation from a school or a reward for having learned the lessons or experiences that God has planned for them? So I'd love to turn this over to you guys first. Did either of you have a thought on that?
Wow.
Go ahead.
I have not thought of it in those terms ever before. I guess I'd think of it more as a graduation than as a reward. Just in the graduation just marks a turning point. You've been progressing and then you go to the next stage. We develop and we make our choices through life, and when we get on the other side, we get to get that really crystal clear, and then we'll be in the place where we can breathe and where we can love the best.
Getting into the workforce is a reward for completing college, or being born is a reward for developing. So if you want to call it a reward, but not like, okay, all right, so I put you through life. Wasn't that miserable? Okay, sorry about that. Here you go. Can I make it up to you? Please still call me Dad if I get something like that. Soni, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think of it's ironic because people find tremendous happiness when they get there. We know, again, from near-death experiences as well as what Swedenborg tells us. But it's not like, I'm so great, I get this big gold star, I get the Oscar. It's much more like you get the opportunity to then go be of service. And it's that joy that the Lord fills you with. That's really what it's about. But again, there's this world of spirits, which is sort of like the temporary transition phase. And during that time, you really get a chance to figure out, what do I really love to do, and what do I feel some regret about some things that I may have done in my earthly life. And you get a chance to review all that. And what you end up with is figuring out, well, what would be my best community to live in with people who are a little bit like me? Maybe they're more intellectual, maybe they like to do things with their hands, or they like to be useful by sharing compassion and love for children. And you'll find like-minded kindred spirits. Is that a reward? Well, I think it's like going to the best club in the world. You get to be invited, and they can hardly wait for you to come and join them. And it's not necessarily your family; it's your kindred spirits that you get to hang out with. So it's sort of rewarding in that sense. You have an opportunity.
Seems like the way Swedenborg is describing it, by the time you can get to heaven, which is a mindset as well as a place, you're not thinking about what it's going to be like for you. You're thinking about how can I help? Like that, you're focused on the good, the joy, the relieving of suffering that you can accomplish for other people. Like that's what you're excited. This is your project you're excited about, and that's what. And you get these wonderful surroundings, but you're like, oh, these are nice perks, but your focus is sort of that. All right, so thank you very much. Let's take a look at our next one. Amanda, do you lose your own consciousness and sense of self? Do we lose the illusion of separateness? So I want to turn this to Chara, and because I saw you react a little bit. Please take the first shot.
Swedenborg says that the more we are joined with the Lord, the more that we are partnered with God, the more we have a sense of self. Even though we know that that God's love is the all reality, but we have a sense of self, the more we acknowledge that that our life comes from Him. It's like a paradox.
Yes.
But you will feel like Amanda. You will feel like you're Amanda, and you love people named Curtis and Soni and Chara, or whoever you love.
You don't have to.
You don't
love
just
us.
meld into sort of a nothingness of God energy or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soni?
For instance, in contrast to my understanding of the ancient Greeks, they would think in the afterlife, you just sort of go off into this gray mist and sort of blur into it. And in other faith traditions, you go into nirvana and you sort of join in with this. And it doesn't look very active. Swedenborg says the afterlife is pretty active. And you feel like this excitement of, oh, goody, I get to go do this thing. And I'm needed today. And that is a sense of identity, although you'd give credit to the Lord at the same time as you're feeling an active agent.
Yes. I like, Chara, that you said paradox. So I'll count up a few things on either side. That you do, Swedenborg says you do have a sense of self, like a heavenly sense of self. Mm-hmm. There's a hellish sense of self, and a hellish sense of self is the ego that wants to win everything and crush everyone. Yeah. But then also you're acknowledging that all your life is from God, and also that you don't even feel like your own internal skills are your own. There's this very communal atmosphere in heaven. But you are. Everyone is a unique entity that they can't be like anything else. It makes a whole. I'll stop counting. This is hurting my fingers. It makes a whole, but it's not a whole composed of the same parts. It's a whole composed of unique parts. The image that he gives is the human body.
Yeah.
However, Amanda is also saying, do we lose the illusion of separateness? And I want to say that there, in a way, yes, because the illusion of separateness is this idea that I live on my own, and in one sense, what Swedenborg says, all life is coming out of God, and everybody is receiving that same life. Also, the illusion of separateness is you can be suffering and I'm not suffering. But in heaven, Swedenborg says that even angels would gladly trade places with anyone that was suffering if they could flip that. So I think that there is, yes, both, as Forrest Gump would say, both is happening at the same time. But it is very much that we go through this life and we develop this sense of self, and we operate within this, and we don't lose all those skills. They transfer. However, I'm sure there are experiences of melting into. People are probably having these all the time. But I think what Swedenborg is saying is that those aren't permanent. That those, like even now in life, you can have it. Just you forget about yourself for a while. How many songs have that in them?
Yeah.
So that's 10 on each side. Okay, I think we have one more question here. Liliana from YouTube. Being in heaven is not easy, especially because you have to fight with your own self-ego. How do we make this journey easier? And so you hit on, one of the big topics, and this is one that Swedenborg devoted a lot of ink to. So, Soni, how do we do it real quick?
Well, I think ego it so often talks about how I'm feeding me. I want to be sure that I'm either the best, or I'm the king, or I'm all my needs are taken care of. Whereas I think really our spiritual self is when we really figure out, how do I pay attention to what you need right now so that I can either feel your joy as mine, or what can I do to enhance your joy or make you feel like you're more needed in the community? And the more we do that, the more the Lord fills us with a sense of joy. And we feel almost like the privilege of the Lord's flowing through us. I don't know how to explain it, but it's different than just, I am the best, I get all these rewards, I've got a great resume, here I am.
Yes, right. Chara, did you have thoughts on that? I know that Swedenborg describes the process, the journey of freeing ourselves from the ego as reformation and regeneration, right? And do you remember any specifics that he gives there of what those processes consist of?
Yeah, he talks about examining yourself, seeing what falls short of what you see as God's plan for orderliness or for good, acknowledge that you've got this problem. I really want to be in control of everybody in my life. And then you say, Lord, could you please take that love away from me? And my behavior I'm going to try to have my behavior not look like I want to be in control of everybody. Yes. And could you please, Lord, change this love of mine?
Well said.
Well, notice how much I've been letting you both talk now after this show. Well, yeah, and I would say that one thing that have found results with that he talks about is the idea that all good is from heaven and all evil is from hell, or all good is from God, all evil is from the ego. These are forces acting on us, and that the less we take ownership of those things, because if I feel like this is my need to control everything, we naturally start to justify it, rationalize it, make space, the mind makes space for that need to stay alive. But if we see that this is rather than being a part of the body, this is a disease within the body. Not like, to feel endlessly guilty about it, but just realize this is not something that's helping anyone. So let's get rid of it. That this is an outside force, and that asking God for good. Obviously it's not an easy thing. If we found it out quickly, we'd just be selling the answer, for like $75 or whatever. Okay. Cool. Yes. You had something?
I just want to say that's really important to just to identify whatever you would call a bad urge or something. Yeah. To just separate yourself from that. Say, okay, that's something. That's the powers of darkness coming in. I am not that. I don't need to do that. Lord, give me your light, kind of a thing.
And it feels, in my experience, when you're making progress, there's an element of excitement to it. When you're endlessly weighed down by guilt or self-deprecation or something like that, I don't really feel like that's when the because Swedenborg goes into this nuance about how hell attacks, heaven defends. That the good side isn't going to sit there and make you feel horrible about who you are, or about what you're doing. That for me, always there's been this excitement of like, it's like realizing, smoking cigarettes is why I can't run very far. And realizing if I stop this, I'm going to be able to run a lot farther. To me, it always has some of that in it, this useful energy in it. Of like, once I'm able to push this away, this is going to be better for me. Not this like, I'm so horrible. Yes. I'm not, because that's actually, that's just hell pushing you around. All right, so we got to move on. I could talk about this forever, and I could let you guys talk a little bit. Okay, but we're going to take a quick video break. We're going to come back with a little meditation to wrap things up. Now we're gonna go to a segment that we call correspondences, which is this idea that Swedenborg writes about endlessly, where objects that we see in the world, physical, visible objects, are symbolic or representative of a deeper spiritual reality, and that by looking at these objects with the spiritual reality in mind, we can kind of connect the two worlds a little bit. So we're going to try to do that today using doves, and as Soni pointed out before the show, doves are a universal symbol of peace. People are aware they mean something good, even though they're just an animal like other animals. But for some reason, these, like, you let out a dove, So doves, Swedenborg is describing them as that all birds have to do with things of the mind, internal things, but the doves specifically have sort of a spiritual, loving quality. So something good inside you that is getting you to, like, some kind of concept or something that's in there that's letting you exude peace, these kinds of things. So I'm not going to say too much more about it. So there's going to be like 45 seconds of images of doves, and just with that sort of in mind, look at them and see how does it feel. Amazing feathers. Feathers are that that they can be so there's so much intense air pressure and forces, kinetic forces being put on feathers, but yet that they can stay in their place and spread when they need to. It's pretty amazing machinery. So hopefully you guys saw something cool in those doves. And thanks everyone for being with us today. If you want to help make this program happen, it's all run off of donations. The Swedenborg Foundation is a nonprofit, so if you click in the description of this video, there's a little link. You can just make a small donation to help it keep going and also to reach new people who might find it interesting. So thanks very much for considering that. Chara and Soni, thank you so much for returning. It's been a pleasure having you both, and hopefully we can have you back sometime soon.
Loved it.
All right, everybody, good night, and we'll see you next Monday, same time.